All right. So it may not be Friday. It's only Tuesday. But that doesn't mean we can't get a visit from our friend over at Ars Technica, Sam Moscovich. How's it going, Sam?
Hello, everybody. I'm just hanging out with all these tomatoes that are growing in my front yard. It's really amazing here in Seattle, Washington right now. I think I
Excellent.
just dropped one on my mouth, so sorry if I just messed up the call. Hi.
That's okay. You didn't. And now I want a little tomato for myself. So you're going to have to ship one out to the new studio here.
Are they real tomatoes or VR tomatoes?
Oh, yeah. Is this real? Is this real life? So real. I heard the squishiness.
They're delicious. They're so good. But we should talk about things that are a little more virtual, a little technology. I feel like you guys are calling me about something.
Yeah, I think we're calling not about the RFID chip that you've placed inside those tomatoes, but actually we're calling you about some PlayStation news. I have a PS3 at home, which oddly enough can play PS3 games pretty much perfectly. Go figure.
That's good to hear, Grandpa.
Yeah, but if I know, wow, I'm an aging community that has the PS3 console in my living room. But if it didn't, apparently all I need is a Windows PC. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, because Sony has launched a initiative to put its PlayStation Now cloud streaming game service on Windows PCs. Now, PlayStation Now works sort of like Netflix for video games. The idea being you look through a menu of a bunch of games that you're interested in, and you click the one you want to play, and there's a computer in the cloud or a PlayStation in the cloud, I don't know what they do exactly, that loads your game and lets you play it over the internet. So as you press buttons, they go back and forth between the cloud and back to your TV. So it's not quite as exact as having a PlayStation in your home, but we've done testing over the years. It's been out since 2014, and it works pretty well. Currently, it's only works on PlayStation 4 consoles, on the PlayStation Vita, and on some select devices like smart TVs. So it's not just for PlayStation systems, and it makes sense that Sony's now saying, hey, if you want to pay a monthly or per 3-month subscription fee, you can play all the games you want on a Windows PC, because it essentially works the same way. The news actually trickled out in a funny way that Sony had messed up and put the announcement in a caption of a blog post. A photo on another blog post had nothing to do with it. And then about a few hours later, they went ahead and said what was actually happening. And they're also releasing a USB wireless adapter for the PlayStation 4 controller. The idea being you can actually take a PlayStation 4 controller and connect it to a laptop or a desktop with Bluetooth. However, the support is a little finicky. It's sort of faking like an Xbox controller in some ways, depending on the game or the app that you're using. Sony clearly wants you to be able to plug this little guy into a computer and have your controller just work. So that's going to be coming in the middle of September. It's going to cost $25 in the United States, this little adapter. So the combination of things we're seeing here is, hey, do you have a Windows computer? We want you to play PlayStation games on it, and we're going to help you use this controller. I find it's a very interesting move on Sony's part. I don't know what you guys think of it.
Well, I'm very interested in this as well. I feel like the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is, at least speaking of grandpa and video games, like I feel like this whole emulation scene that exists behind the scenes, that exists illegitimately, where people want to be able to have access to playing these old games, all of this content that's been created year after year after year, and then because it doesn't fit into the current model, the current console that exists, it literally drops off the face of the earth. And other than buying an ancient console that's 10 years old and finding somewhere to buy the game and all that kind of stuff, you want to relive that stuff, that's your only option. And so this seems, at least to me, to be some sort of a way for Sony to kind of cash in at least a little bit on that kind of sentiment. What do you think?
Well, I think you're onto something here in terms of what these services do. They aren't having the newest games. These are PlayStation 3 games, and
Right.
PlayStation 3 lost mainstream official support a couple of years ago. But those games are still out there. They're quite good, and this is a really interesting way to go back to a back catalog and try out older games. In my dream world, Sony would go all the way back to its PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1 platforms,
Right.
put all that stuff out there. And I mean, that's how Netflix really began getting people's attention. They were able to take these giant back catalogs of content that people didn't priced very highly. You could go through and watch entire seasons of The West Wing, and people at West Wing thought, okay, whatever, this isn't worth that much. People might like it. And all these different shows and all this different older content being in one place, one easily accessible place for subscription, everyone gets paid. People who might have pirated or who might have done emulation or might have done some other way of getting the stuff are now willing to throw in that $10 or $15 a month to try stuff out. So I think this honestly is Sony's plan to essentially say, both Sony and Microsoft have kind of said things about the future of gaming platforms not being about hardware. You're not going to get the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox 1.7. The idea is that it's like a phone universe where you keep on getting new iPhones and they continue to work with the old stuff and they'll work with newer stuff. And so for PlayStation to come out and say, it doesn't even matter what system you use. We want your money,
right,
whatever device you use. And this may be a first step to a very bold strategy in that way, where as long as your device can display lights and colors and connect to the internet, you could use PlayStation Now. I'm sure that's the dream. And I, for one, would love to have more good cloud gaming services. The main issue is that they have that latency. You are going back and forth from your home to the cloud. And so when I press the X button to jump, that could have a delay if I don't have incredibly good internet. And for a lot of the United States, that's just not a default. For a lot of the United States, a disc game is still the ultimate way to go, whether that's because you have slow internet or because you have freaking bandwidth caps. So there's still a lot of issues, I think, to work out before everyone's just going to rush to use a video streaming game service. But I also think that the way broadband plays out in the United States will be very interesting for services just like this, because video games blaze a trail in some ways that other services look at and go, oh, we could do it that way too. So I like the news. I think it's a good move. I think it definitely puts some pressure on Microsoft in terms of their Xbox everywhere kind of initiative. I think this might actually be a little more accessible to the average person all in all. But we'll have to see what Microsoft does this fall. Their big Xbox Anywhere initiative of games on Windows PCs, on Windows 10 PCs is coming. So we'll have to definitely, PlayStation Now is going to work on all of Windows. You don't need Windows 10 for this. So that's a point in Sony's favor. You can stick to Windows 7 and still try the service out. So that's the thing. This is all coming down the pipeline in a couple weeks. We'll definitely be trying it out, testing it out, seeing if it performs better or worse on Windows than it does on dedicated PlayStation hardware.
So my grandmother was wondering when I might be able to have this on my Mac. And when I say my grandmother, I mean me.
Know what? Yep, there we go. Wow, you guys have really souped things up at the new studio.
New studio. We have a live drummer in the corner.
I don't believe that's coming anytime soon. That hasn't been announced. I see no very nice. I see no reason for Sony to take that long. I think it's just one thing at a time. I think there's not going to be that much difference ultimately for going, let's talk to the internet, let's get this stuff sent to a system. And Macintosh OS X is pretty much a more stable platform than a bazillion different Windows computers. So they haven't said anything. I don't see it taking that much longer. I don't see this being as delayed for OS X users the way that a lot of other good stuff is delayed for people who love their Macs. So, Grandma, hold on. Your grandma. I'm not calling you Grandma. I should go.
What about Apple TV? Apple TV anytime soon?
Oh, smart TV platforms have this stuff, so I don't know what exclusivity stuff there is with some of the sets that currently have PlayStation Now. That's up to Sony. They certainly didn't announce it. They weren't using this opportunity to say Apple TV, but this is setting the table for being kind of like Netflix. Netflix used to only be on Xbox 360, and then when the Wii came out on the Wii, it was a big deal. Now you can't throw a console down the street without hitting a Netflix device. So, they're setting the table, I assume, to get as much money from as many people as possible.
And open up all that back catalog. I completely agree with you. Like, if they were to continue going back further and further and further, suddenly this becomes even more compelling over time for true fans of the platform over the years.